basics of COVID-19.
Yes, sir. Done.
The basic do's and don'ts, and also we covered the vulnerability of Tamil Nadu, which was covered very ably by Mr. K. Vasudevan. So Arun, can you please give me the sharing rights?
Yes, sir. Just a second, sir. Yes, sir. You can please proceed.
Thank you. So today we'll cover the basic concepts which we were supposed to cover yesterday, and also we will cover the TMP under Disaster Management Act. What does this disaster management say about disaster management plan? Now the basic concepts, we all were talking yesterday about hazard, about risk, about disaster, about vulnerability, capacity. Vasudevanji was talking about the vulnerability of Tamil Nadu, the coastal belt, the internal belt. He was also talking about the problem that Tamil Nadu faced during the recent 2015 floods, and also recent flood and the problem of water scarcity that is in many regions of Tamil Nadu. So we'll be talking about the few concepts, and that why we call some emergencies, some events as disaster, and some events we just call it an accident or an emergency, and we pass it on. This is what we see the scenario in terms of any emergency. Now, what emergency we come across in these photographs? There is a tsunami, there is aftermath of the tsunami, there is a building collapse, there is a flood, there is a fire, the secondary hazard, that is fire induced by some primary hazard. So this is how the entire scenario changes. You all must be knowing about you can recapture the images of tsunami in 2004, which hit the Tamil Nadu coast. Nagapattinam, Kadalur, majority of the areas were affected. So the entire thing is that whether we should call every emergency as a disaster. Our government of India, when it enacted the act, it deliberated upon this issue and came up with the definition of a disaster. The definition of disaster that a Disaster Management Act has given is that any event, any catastrophe, any mishap, any calamity, any accident, which may be natural or man-made. Man-made can be due to negligence, due to accident, and which causes a substantial loss to life and property. That is what, and that problem that has been created, the substantial loss that any event creates to life and property is so huge that the affected community is not capable of coping with it. It doesn't have the capacity to cope with it. Then that event is termed as a disaster. Or in broader terms, if we say the outcome of an event can be categorized into disaster or non-disaster. So the first thing that we were talking about in disaster was any catastrophe, any mishap, any accident, whether man-made or natural. So that event is called a hazard. So that means any event which has the potential to inflict a heavy loss is a hazard. It is not turned into a disaster yet. It is still an event. You can see the photograph that is there. This is basically the lake. This is a dam, and we know that many of the people, they live downstream. So if there is a crack in the dam, that crack can lead to a disaster downstream, that is flood, heavy flow of the water, which will cause flood downstream. So, but this is an event. The crack in the dam is an event. So that crack is a hazard. That crack becomes a hazard, and the impact of this crack, if it aggravates and this water flows downstream, then the impact of that is called a disaster. And the second thing that we were talking was the impact on life and property. How things impact life and property. It depends on two things. One, exposure, and second, your condition. So the exposure and condition, when exposure is basically the risk, that how you are exposed to a hazard is a risk, termed as a risk, exposure to a hazard. And the condition which leads to the degree of loss is vulnerability. So that means if we talk of the risk, then exposure is there. So exposure is there for everybody. Anywhere, anytime, exposure is there. But that exposure and hazard, if coupled with the deteriorating condition, gives rise to a disaster. Can give rise to a disaster. So the condition, you can see the photograph. Risk is there in both the things. The condition of the houses, the condition of the placement of the shops. So when we talk of the condition, what all factors the condition? Your physical, that condition can be there. Your society bondages, social conditions may be there. Maybe the vulnerability, say the gender comes in the social category. Your economics, poverty, etc., that comes into the condition, and the flora and fauna. Nowadays, this flora and fauna has or you can say has coupled with the social problem, and it gives rise to the man-animal conflict. That has also added on to the problem, vulnerability. So the physical vulnerability, the economic vulnerability, the social vulnerability, and the environmental vulnerability. All these vulnerability are there. All these vulnerability are there. So when we talk of exposure and condition, so there are some things which are at risk. So we call them elements at risk, which can be affected by the hazard that is coming in. People, life, property, the community, the facilities, the infrastructure, the livelihood, economic conditions, and the environment. These are the elements at risk. You can term these infrastructure things into critical infrastructures also. So that critical infrastructures like hospitals, schools, bridges, etc., they become the critical infrastructures wherein your plan should focus more. You can see the condition. You might have come across, not so big, but yes, you might have come across these things. So you have hazard, you have exposure, you have vulnerability. So if these three things combine together, then that can lead to disaster risk. That can lead to disaster risk. So you must, but when it is coupled with the low capacity, then it is confirmed that disaster will occur. So hazard, exposure, vulnerability coupled with low capacity gives rise to disaster. So this is the thing, that you are exposed. Yes, you are exposed. Everybody is exposed anytime, anywhere. You are exposed to one or other things. Hazard is there. It may be natural, it may be man-made. See, sometimes you might have come across the news that there were two people fighting, or there was fighting going on. Somebody was standing in the balcony, and the bullet that was fired misfired, and it struck him. So that exposure, if you are there somewhere near the problem that is there, so it will give rise to the exposure, and it will make you vulnerability. It will make you vulnerable. And when these all three things combine with your less capacity, why it was less capacity in the balcony? Because you were unaware that the bullet can hit you, so that your capacity is low. So that becomes when all three things, then there is a disaster, that the bullet has hit you. So this is the cycle of the disaster management. I'm going a little fast on this issue because we have more presentations on this, and many of the things have been covered by Mr. Vasudevan yesterday. So we talk of disaster management cycle. These we have talked about the basic concepts of disaster management. That is, one is the event, because something to happen as a disaster, what all things are necessary? One, event must be there. Number two, exposure must be there. Number three, condition should be such that the exposure becomes great, exposure becomes high. And fourth thing is that your capacity should be low, that you are not able to cope up with the exposure and the intensity of that hazard. So all four things, when coupled together, gives rise to a disaster. So these are the basic concepts of disaster. Why disaster is there, and what are the events that we call it as a disaster? So when we come to the management part, management is optimal utilization of resources for achieving a goal. Here, when we talk of disaster management, what is the goal? There are three major goals. Number one, save life. Number two, save property. And number three, stabilize the situation. These are the broader aims of any disaster management. So when it is a management activity, then there must be some activities which combine together to make it as a disaster management. So the activities that is there are, once there is a disaster, the first and the foremost thing is you have to search people and rescue people. You have to search, you will find dead bodies also, you will find survivors also. So for survivors, you have to rescue them. For dead bodies, you have to send them to the hospital. And you have to prepare the list of dead. That is what is similar the case with the livestock. So that is all search and rescue. Then comes the response part. And the response part is a little big. The first thing in the response part is we have already talked about, that is search and rescue. The second part is the relief, immediate relief. That is, you take them to the relief camp. You put them in the relief camp. You provide basic amenities there, irrespective of the level of the person who has been rescued. You provide them with the basic amenities. Then you try to rehabilitate them. All these go simultaneously. It's not that this will happen, then this will happen, then this will happen, then this will. The only thing that will happen is that you immediately start with search and rescue. Then you go to the relief part. That is, you take them to the either hospital or to the relief camp. Rehabilitation is there. Build back better aspect, which was being talked about by Vasudevanji. Because you will never ever think of giving your children the risk that you have faced. So you always will try to build a better thing. So that build back better is there. Reconstruction, rehabilitation, and all these things combined together is the recovery, along with the psychosocial part that Vasudevanji was discussing yesterday. So all these things is recovery, because recovery should be holistic. Rehabilitation should be holistic. Then reconstruction should be built back better. Then you should have psychological rehabilitation, and all the combined together gives rise to response. No, gives rise to recovery. And these are all activities which are post-disaster activities. So we call them crisis management. And when we talk of DRM, that is risk management, then the risk is being managed. It is not the activity that is being managed, it is the risk that is being managed. So the risk that is being managed is basically that you are doing the activities wherein you are trying to block the way or reduce the impact of a disaster. So that becomes that if at all possible, you can, if at all possible to prevent, you undertake the activity to prevent, or otherwise you undertake the activity of mitigation and effective response. And that all things combined together is called preparedness. You prepare for prevention, you prepare for mitigation, and you prepare for response. So this is how the disaster management cycle goes. When we talk of preparedness, what is preparedness? It is the prerequisite activity that is done to strengthen yourself. To strengthen yourself, to strengthen your building, to strengthen the coordination, to strengthen the everything, that is preparedness. And once you strengthen yourself, you can effectively respond, do the response, and you can effectively undertake the mitigation activity. When we talk of prevention, nipping at the bud. Yes, you stop that right at the start point. And for natural disasters, it is very difficult. For man-made disasters, at times you can. Disaster mitigation. It is the reduction of the impact. There are two parts in disaster mitigation. One is structural part, which we see in the photographs, and the second is the non-structural part, wherein what we are doing as a training is as non-structural part. The non-structural part is very well explained when we talk of office situation or a school situation or a house situation. See, in a house, everybody's house you must have seen, or in everybody's office you must have seen. The passages are basically occupied by the almirahs. The staircases, the surge area near the staircases is often occupied by the water coolers. You can imagine when something happened, say earthquake, all the almirahs will fall down. In the room also you will have bed, and beside the bed you will have almirah. So if nothing no measure you have taken, then that almirah for a shake may fall on the bed, killing you. May fall on the passage, blocking your exit. So that part to fix the almirah, where it is to fix the photocopier machine not to move, to fix the television, to fix the library, to fix the school camps. So that all are non-structural. To create awareness, to sensitize, all these are non-structural mitigation activities. So now you have many of the buildings are glass buildings. So unless and until you laminate that glass, it might, with a small shaking, it might break and cause harm. So you might be safe in the building, but that glass can hit you. So that non-structural measure is to be done. See, there are many things that this picture will basically give you a clear-cut idea about disaster preparedness, mitigation, and prevention. See, the boulder is falling down. You have given early warning, so the person is running away from that the passage of the boulder. That is preparedness. You have given early warning. So this is early warning is the preparedness measure. Prevention, that you have nailed that boulder at the top so that it doesn't fall. So you have prevented it to become a disaster. Hazard is there, exposure is there, risk is there, vulnerability is there. The person who is standing is vulnerable, because if that chain breaks, it will again come down. But for mitigation, you are there, it is falling down, but you have constructed a safe structure above your head, so that if the boulder falls with a force on that, you are safe inside. So this is how the preparedness and measures are there, and these all combined give us the final verdict of the risk reduction. You are reducing the risk. Response, search and rescue, first aid, CPR, taking saving from the drowning, taking you taking you out of the building, then taking you to the hospital. These are all response activities. Rehabilitating, providing basic amenities in the relief camp is also what we say about the response activity. And recovery, yes, build back better, or retrofitting, involving the community, building the owned house, ownership, the house with ownership is what is recovery. So that holistic approach is to be there, wherein everybody feels that he or she is important, and what we are constructing is for the betterment of us, and also better than what we had constructed earlier, and will not be affected by the disaster again. The mental trauma is also what is to be taken care of in the recovery part. We talk of risk management. Risk reduction is one part, and risk management is that risk is there, then you try to manage it this is the risk that you are seeing. But you are trying to adopt these strategies, the policies. In the current times, you had that lockdown. That was a policy decision. So that was risk management. The providing of the PPE kit was also risk management, reducing the risk effect. So that management was there. When we talk of vulnerability, we have this 58%, 56 to 58% of the land is earthquake prone. 18% land is 28% land is prone to drought. Then we have 12% of the land prone to floods. 8% of the land, the entire the 8,000 odd kilometers of the coastal belt is prone to cyclones. Even internal areas are prone to high winds, which often is termed as cyclones. So that 8% of the landmass is prone to cyclones. Man-made hazards are also there. We all have seen terrorist activities are also there. So we have seen a number of things. So this is the vulnerability of India. And when we talk of the state, the thing was already been covered by Mr. Vasudevan yesterday. So now this is the first part of my presentation. In the second, I'll start with second part of the presentation, which basically is the disaster management plan under the DM Act. So DM Act, although the detail will be covered by Mr. Vikram Gurjar today, but I'm giving you the glimpse that the DM Act is basically was enacted on 23rd of December 2005. It has 11 chapters and 79 sections, wherein 6 of the chapters are devoted towards institutional mechanism, 1 chapter for coordination, 1 chapter for the penalties and things, and 1 chapter for what to do. So that is roles and responsibilities. So that is how the chapterization is there of the Act, and important provisions are there. And when we talk of disaster management plan, the important provision is there that every entity, every department in India must have a disaster management plan, which should be in conformity with the state, district, state, and national plan. We have national plan. In 2016 it was prepared, and 2019 it was upgraded. So our disaster management policy, which was passed in October 2009, also states that the coordination and the awareness are the major crux of reducing the risk, DRR activities. So they also say that there should be coordination, there should be awareness, there should be sensitization, and everybody should, there should be a clear SOP. Everybody should know what you have to do and how you have to do. So that is all what is being done. That policy also talks about, and that is what is being done by the disaster management plan. DDMA, he will be, Mr. Vikram Gurjar will be talking about it. I just say that disaster management, the DDMA, District Disaster Management Authority, has collector as the chairman, the Jila Parishad elected representative, Jila Parishad chairman is the co-chair. It has 7 members, wherein ADM rank officer is the CEO of DDMA, SP is there, CMO medical is there, transport people are there, and 2 more officers can be inducted by the collector. The powers and functions of DDMA. The major function of the DDMA is to prepare the district plan and assess the other entities to prepare down below the district to prepare their own disaster management plan. The third important activity of the DDMA is to implement the policies and guidelines laid down by the state for the betterment of the society. So these are all the guidelines. So they also give directions and facilitate the process of preparation of the DM plan. They also prepare the format of how the DM plan is to be made down below the district. The state level and the district level plan format is available on NDMA website, and down below it is the function of the DDMA to provide the format of how disaster management plan is to be made. They have to monitor and evaluate also the district plan and also the plan of the entities that have been prepared. They have to ensure they have to ensure that the disaster management cycle is more or less to the extent possible being followed. All the preparedness measures, all the community-based measures to be taken. Then they have to organize the mock drills, etc. So all these activities are to be monitored, facilitated by the DDMA. So these are all what we had discussed. The response plan, clear-cut roles and responsibilities, or who will do what. Now we have the IRS being implemented in various parts of the country. So that incident response system, how that incident response system will be applicable to the state, modified with the state needs, and all the important positions, who will do what is the SOP that is to be developed by DDMA under the IRS system, and that IRS system has to be implemented. Many of the states have already notified IRS to be taken up as a response mechanism. Advise, advocate, assist in terms of preparation of the plan. Also in terms of coordination of the local government activities, and the coordination, ensure there is a coordination between the local level authority, local level administration, and the NGOs for the betterment of the community is what the DDMA must take care of. So that is what is needed by the DDMA. So if we have that DDMA thing, so that is where the activities are to be there, and the DDMA has the power to take any vehicle or requisition any person from any department for within their purview for helping out in disaster management activities. Preparedness activities, prevention activities, mitigation activities, keeping the needs of the people in mind is also a part of what DDMA has to do. There is another activity that DDMA has to perform, is the updation and review of the India Disaster Resource Network. That is compilation of the resource, the compilation of the stock, and also take care of how and when the stocks are updated, and who is in say control of which resource which is to be needed in terms of the disaster. In post-disaster also, their work is that pre-disaster you have to identify the places where the relief camps can be made. What will be the evacuation routes, what will be the basic amenities that will be provided in the relief camps in case if the need happens. And if the school, usually schools are being taken care, schools are being worked upon as the relief camps at maximum places. So what will be the education facility of the students during the period the school is being taken as used as the relief camp? Positioning of the resources is also part of the role of DDMA, and also implementation of the guidelines and policies being prepared by SDMA, and the schemes being prepared by the national level and the state level. Their implementation at the district level is the role. When we talk of district plan, DDMA has to prepare it, send a copy to the SDMA for approval, and once it is approved, get the copy, circulate it among all who are responsible for the implementation of that plan, and review and evaluate that plan at a specified date, so that everybody knows that this is the date where plan will be reviewed and updated and evaluated, and also by that time everybody is ready with the requisite information which has to go into the district plan. So this is how things are being managed at the district level. Capacity building activities, yes, they have to undertake the capacity building activities, the awareness activities, the mitigation activities with the help of local government. They have to prepare the mitigation plan and response plan as well. They have to identify the stakeholders who will be responsible for undertaking the work, and also they have to identify the roles and responsibilities which the people will follow in terms when the disaster strikes. So this is the power that I was talking, that they have the power to requisition by order any officer, any department from any department at the district level or local authority, that is which is in their jurisdiction, for any measure that is being taken for prevention or mitigation of the disaster, so that the community is basically safeguarded from that disaster. So this is how the DDMA works, and this is what the DDMA is all about in terms of disaster management. Thank you very much. Over to you, Arun.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much for enlightening us on the topic, that is basics of disaster management and DM plan, Disaster Management Act 2005. Now, if participant, if you have any query, you can ask through the chat box, or you can raise the hand after a lecture of Shri Vikram Gujar sir. Sir will be speaking on the institutional framework of a country, that how disaster management has been emerged in our country, and how there are many parameters in which disaster management is working. So for that particular lecture, I would like to invite Shri Vikram Gujar sir. He is a Deputy Commandant with National Disaster Response Force, and presently looking after the vaccination drive at Ministry of Home Affairs, Government of India. I welcome you, sir, Shri Vikram Gujar sir, and over to you. And I will give you a presenter right just a second, sir.
Thank you, Arun. Thank you.
Yes.
Yeah, good afternoon, sir. I'm Vasudevan from Tamil Nadu, sir. Vikram, sir. How are you, sir?
I'm fine, sir.
Good afternoon, sir. Nice to see you here, sir.
Thank you, sir. Same here.
Yeah.
I hope my PPT is visible.
Yes, sir, PPT is visible.
So, Arun, what is the time limit? Half an hour or 20 minutes?
You may conclude in 30 minutes, sir.
Okay, thank you. So, should I start?
Yes, sir, please.
Thank you, Arun. Good afternoon, friends. And on the onset, I would like to welcome all the participants, the organizers, hosts, who has given me this opportunity. And I will be presenting a lecture on institutional mechanism vis-a-vis disaster management in our own country. We will also speak about the genesis of disaster management or the institutional mechanism which started, how it is in practice, what all institutional setups are available or they are in existence, prevalent in our country. So, friends, firstly, as we all know that when we talk about institutional setup or institutional framework, then what does it mean and what does it stand for? Institutional framework, as the term or the name denotes, it refers to a set of formal and informal organizational structure or the service norms, formal that consists of a set of organizational structure, formal organizational structure in itself, formal rules and regulations. And when we talk about informal part, then it consists of informal norms for service provisions, that what all services, what all the informal services which are required to be provided to the disaster affected people. So basically, this institutional framework or the institutional setup or the institutional mechanism, it refers to a combination of a set of formal and informal organizational or service norms which are there in existence, and it is a combination of both of these factors and what is the need and why they are needed. Because when we have a set of institutional mechanism or an institutional framework, then we have a crystal clear demarcation between the formal and the informal structures. We have a crystal clear outlining of the roles and responsibilities which are assigned to each and every organization, each and every setup, or each and every individual who are involved in disaster management or disaster mitigation activities. And as I've said, and as we all know, that dealing with disasters is in itself requires a concentrated, coordinated, and an integrated approach. And this is what we can say, that why do we need an institutional setup, and because this will help us to outline the roles and responsibilities which are assigned to each individual. Everyone should be crystal clear in their mind about what all tasks they have to, what all duties they have to perform, whom they have to report, from whom they have to take orders, and from whom they have to connect to. So this helps us in outlining organizational structure. It helps us to understand the nitty-gritties which are involved in the disaster management mechanism. So, and you all know that disasters are not a new phenomena. This is not the mankind has been facing these disasters since ages, and we have been dealing with them. We have been tackling, and we have been trying to cope up with the disasters out of the our best of our coping capabilities and capacities. So after the origins of a cyclone, there was a need in the change of approach, and there was a paradigm shift in the approach while dealing with disaster management. Prior to 1999 or erstwhile approach, we had relief and response and relief centric approach, that is, the disasters took place, and after that we became active and we became reactive, and we take actions accordingly so as to provide the response and relief that is required, that is needed to be extended to the victims. But after the paradigm shift, after the Odisha super cyclone, or after there was a shift in our approach towards dealing with disasters, that from response to relief, we shifted to holistic, multi-sectoral, multi-dimensional, coordinated, integrated approach, which in itself contains the element of prevention, restoration, mitigation, preparedness, culture of quick thinking, culture of quick strategic thinking, culture of quick response, culture of mitigation. So overall, it contains the elements which are required in totality while dealing with any disaster, and this was very much required, and this helps us to attain what we call the proactive approach. So there was shift from reactive or active approach to proactive, because earlier we used to act when the disaster is struck or after the effect of the disaster, impact of the disaster. But in this holistic or the multi-dimensional, multi-sectoral, integrated approach, we tend to take preventive measures. We tend to take, in order to mitigate the effects, we put desired focus on preparedness and capacity building. So we are proactive, we are very well prepared, and so that we can act and deal with disasters in a effective and efficacious manner. So when the need arises after the Odisha super cyclone, a committee, a high-level committee or a high-power committee was set up or constituted by Government of India in 1999 under the chairmanship of the then Agriculture Secretary, Mr. J.C. Pant. J.C. Pant, and this committee submitted its report in 2001, and it made certain recommendations. So the recommendations, the salient feature or the salient, मैं कॉल करता हूँ, एक लेक्चर ले रहा हूँ. The lectures, the recommendations which were salient, and the salient recommendations which were recommended by or put up by the J.C. Pant committee, that it recommended that we must have a national disaster response plan, and we must be prepared with a comprehensive list of all the disasters, and we must emphasize a culture of preparedness, a culture of mitigation, a culture of quick response, a culture of strategic thinking, and a culture of prevention and restoration. And it also advocated that we must develop a system of quick response through a well-equipped network of control rooms at all levels, because as we all know that without communication, none of the actions or no operation or no active this plan cannot be successful, because communication is the backbone of any action or operation. And the basic or the main aim was that everybody was intended towards decrease in the loss of life, whether it is property destruction, whether it is the social and economic disruptions, or the loss of life and limb, or which is being caused by natural hazards or any of the disasters. So basic emphasis was to minimize the disaster losses and to make the world prepared towards dealing with disasters in a holistic and comprehensive manner. And this was same advocated by all-party national committee under the chairmanship of the then PM in way back in 2001. So this is how the paradigm shift was taking place. As I've said, there was shift from relief-centric approach to multidisciplinary, multi-sectoral, holistic and integrated approach. And at the same time, after the 11th five-year plan in 2000, covering the period from 2007 to 2012, it also clearly outlined a multi-pronged strategy for total risk management for sustainable development. And the National Disaster Management Program, which was launched under Central Sector Scheme at central level in 18 states, was also launched during that time. So what was the outcome or the end result of that? There was paradigm shift, a committee, it made its recommendations accepted by the all-party national committee and the government of India, that a national roadmap on disaster management was prepared. It clearly presented an outline of the disaster management plan, or then the disaster management framework was developed, and the main emphasis or the main outcome of all these endeavors was the enactment of Disaster Management Act 2005, which was enacted as a central law on disaster management and on December 2005. And the aim of this DM Act, that it provides an institutional mechanism for a holistic and coordinated approach towards disaster management. And now we'll discuss about that what are the provisions which are included under this DM Act. It provides for constitution of disaster management authorities at all levels, that is national, state and district. At national level, we have NDMAs, National Disaster Management Authority. At state levels, we have State Disaster Management Authority. And at district level, we have District Disaster Management Authorities. So it also outlines and speaks about the role of local authorities, that is Panchayati Raj institutions and municipalities, in disaster management after the enactment of 73rd and 74th Constitutional Amendment Act, which by virtue of which these local bodies were created. And this act also puts in place the disaster management plans at all levels, that is national, state and district level. And in the coming slides, we'll come to know that who prepares the national plan and who approves the national plan at various levels. So this DM Act of 2005 was enacted on 23rd December 2005. And this provides for creation of or establishment of various institutions which are part of institutional mechanism in our own country, that is NDMA, National Disaster Management Authority. Then we have SDMA, State Disaster Management Authorities. Then we have DRRs, that is District Disaster Management Authorities. And then we have establishment of NIDM, National Institute of Disaster Management, and National Disaster Response Force, that is NDRF. It also speaks about the constitution of Disaster Response Fund and Disaster Mitigation Funds at national, state and district level. I'll also briefly apprise you all about the latest recommendations of 15th Finance Commission about this disaster response funds and mitigation funds at national, state and district level. This act also provides penalties for obstruction, false claims and misappropriation, etc. So, and it also says that there should not be any discrimination on the ground of sex, caste, religion, community, descent, while providing compensation or relief to the victims who are being affected by the disaster. Now, as this was the idea, or this is what we have discussed about this DM Act, or the special provisions or the features of DM Act. And I would request each and every participant to kindly go through the Disaster Management Act 2005, as it will enlighten you all and help you all to understand the basic sections or the provisions which are there in our DM Act. And now we will discuss about institutional framework which is prevalent in our own country. And again, if we talk about institutional setup, then India is a federal country and we have central and state governments. So at central government, we have the MHA as Ministry of Home Affairs as the nodal ministry, which for these disasters subjects, except for drought, for which the Ministry of Agriculture is the nodal ministry. So under MHA, we have NIDM and NDRF, the National Institute of Disaster Management, and National Disaster Response Force. NDRF is the specialist force, that is, it is entrusted with the functions of on-ground execution of the specialist force, and NIDM is entrusted with the functions of the responsibility and roles of capacity building and imparting training to the various stakeholders all over India. And then we have at national level, we have National Disaster Management Authority, which is the policy making or the highest apex policy-making body in disaster management, and it is being chaired by the Honorable PM. And NEC, that is National Executive Council, the Union Home Secretary to the Government of India is the ex-officio chairman of NEC, and NEC assists NDMA in its functions and discharge. It helps assist NDMA in discharging of its functions. Similarly, at state government, we have State Disaster Management Authority, where the Honorable CM of the concerned state is the chairman, and it is being assisted by SEC in discharging of its duties and functions. And Cabinet Chief Secretary of the concerned state is the ex-officio chairman. And similarly, in the states, we have DDMAs and panchayats and municipalities, and these DDMAs, the chairman is the district magistrate or the chair or the collector or the magistrate, by whatsoever nomenclature is being. So the district is the basic executing unit. As I've said, that the dealing with disasters requires concentrated, coordinated, and integrated efforts. And by integrated efforts, coordinated and concentrated, I mean that we require the effort of one and all, not only government or the non-government organizations. We also require the support of scientific and technical institutions. We require support of academic institutions. We require support of corporate sector, professional bodies, NGOs, local bodies, private organizations, and on top of and above all, we require support of one and all. That is, we require support of community, because community is the first responder at the time of disaster. So it requires support of one and all, sparing none. So now we will discuss about the various institutional mechanisms or the various authorities, disaster management authorities at various levels, which are there in existence in our own country. So first, at central level, we have NDMA, this National Disaster Management Authority, and this NDMA is headed by Honorable PM, and it can have up to a maximum of 9 members, and it may constitute an advisory committee consisting of experts of disaster management subject to assist them in its functioning, day-to-day functioning. So NEC, that is National Executive Council, assists it, and NDMA, it is the NDMA which lays down the policies, plans, and guidelines for disaster management in our country, and the National Executive Council shall prepare the National Disaster Management Plan. So here, what the things to notice and ponder is that the National Disaster Management Plan is prepared by National Executive Council, and which is finally approved by NDMA. So preparation of plan is the responsibility of NEC, and it is approved by NDMA. And while preparing the National Disaster DM Plan, the NEC it should ensure that this national plan shall include the measures for prevention and mitigation of disasters and integration of integration of mitigation measures in the plan's preparedness and capacity building, and it is the NDMA which shall recommend guidelines for the minimum standards of relief which is required to be provided to the persons which are affected by the disasters. So the NDMA is basically a recommending authority. This NDMA approves the plan, National Disaster Management Plan, which is prepared by NEC. It lays down policy on disaster management. It approves approves the plans which are prepared by various ministerial departments of Government of India, and it ensures that all the plans should be prepared. They shall be prepared, and they must be prepared in accordance with the national plan. And it lays down guidelines which are required to be followed by state authorities while trying out their own state disaster management plan. It also coordinates the enforcement and implementation of policy and plan for disaster management, because it is entrusted with the responsibility for information, enforcement and implementation of the guidelines. And it recommends provisions for fund for mitigation. And the NDMA also provides support to other countries affected by major disasters as determined by the central government. It must take other measures for prevention, mitigation, or preparedness and capacity building for dealing with disasters. So it also helps, and because as it is the apex body and apex policy making body, so it also works in close coordination with NIDM and NDRF. Now coming to NEC, that is National Executive Council, it is constituted in the Section 8 of DM Act 2005. It assists NDMA in its performance of its functions. HS Union Home Secretary is the ex officio chairman, and various secretaries of the Government of India, as listed out in the slide, they are the members of, and apart from these, the chief of the integrated staff of this chief of staff committee is also the ex officio member of this NDMA, and it may also constitute NEC, and it may also constitute one or more subcommittees for the efficient discharge of its functions depending on its work allocation. And the NEC is the coordinating and monitoring body for disaster management as per Section 10 of DM Act, and it is also entrusted with the responsibility to prepare a national plan, and which is approved by the NDMA. It monitors the implementation of national policy it also monitors the implementation of national policy. So similarly, at central level, we have discussed NDM and NEC, and at state level we have SDMS, and that is State Disaster Management Authority, and the Honorable CM of the concerned state is the chairman or the head. It heads the SDMA, and it can have up to a maximum of 8 members, which are being appointed by the Chief Minister. And out of these 8, one of the members which is being designated as the vice chairman of the SDMA by the CM, and Chief Secretary of the state is the chairperson of the state executive committee, and it may also or may not constitute an advisory committee of experts as and when it deems necessary. And similarly, in state we have DDMS, and the state government, it is mandatory that all state government shall establish DDMS in each district, which are being headed by district magistrate, and it shall consist of members not exceeding 7, as decided by the state government. So here, DDMS can have up to a maximum of 7 members, and SDMA up to a maximum of 8 members, and NDMA up to a maximum of 9 members. And these DDMAs shall act as the district planning, coordinating and implementing body for the disaster management. And it is the DDMAs are responsible for planning, coordination and implementation of disaster management, and to take such measures for disaster management as provided in the guidelines. Because as we all know that implementation part or the unit in our country is the district level. So these DDMAs are the implementing authorities or the implementing executing agencies, which has the power to examine any construction in any of the area, and whether this construction is as per the is following all the safety protocols or the safety norms and standards, and if these are there, and if there is any discrepancies, then they have the power to act accordingly as per the rule. And these JDMAs has also to arrange for relief measures and respond to the disasters at the district level. Then again, while coming to the center, then we have NIDM, that is National Institute of Disaster Management, which is constituted under Disaster Management 2005. It is the premier institute for capacity building, capacity development, or capacity building in disaster management subject, and it is also the primary institute which is entrusted with the responsibility of imparting training to various ministries, departments of center, state, and various stakeholders, or the all the stakeholders who are dealing, who are involved or who deals in the disaster management subject. So it is also entrusted with the nodal responsibility for human resource development, capacity building, training purposes, research, documentation, policy advocacy in the field of disaster management, and it is it inculcates and promotes a culture of prevention in involving all the stakeholders, and it is also into strategic partnership with various ministries or departments of center, state, and local governments. And other than all these government establishments, it is also involved in strategic partnership with academics, research, and technical organizations in India and abroad as well, and other bilateral, multilateral international agencies as per the norms of the Government of India. So basically, NIDM is also involved in the fields of research, documentation, training, preparation of training modules, preparation and making of reports with respect to disaster management subjects. Now, we have discussed the policymaking institutions, we have discussed the capacity building or the training imparting institutions. Now we'll discuss the institutions which are involved in on-ground operations, or who takes care, who implements the specialist response at ground level. So NDRF, National Disaster Response Force, is constituted for the purpose of specialist force to a threatening disaster, and the response, as we all know, that the responsibility of managing disasters lies with the states in our own country, and MHA is the nodal ministry in central government. And when there are calamities of severe nature, the central government sends team of NDRF, which consists of the specialist response people. Their teams are sent to states on their request, and at a certain time, the state center may take decision on its own and can send team to assist the states. NDRF is under the NDMA, and it is headed by an IPS officer who is designated as the Director General of NDRF. At present, NDRF has 16 battalions. The 4 battalions are in their raising phase, 12 are deployed, and the 13th one, which is deployed, which is going its pre-induction training at Ladowar, Punjab. So the total strength of each battalion of NDRF is 149, and each battalion consists of 18 self-contained specialist team, and each team has 45 persons, which includes engineers, technicians, electricians, dog squads, paramedicals, and medical staff. And out of these 12, or we can say out of these 16, NDRF has at present 4 battalions which are capable of responding to radiological, nuclear, biological, and chemical disasters. So, and all the 16 battalions are consist out of 16 battalions from BSF, CRP, SSB, ITBP, and Assam Rifles is also included. So basically, NDRF consists of specialist response people who are on deputation from these Central Armed Police Forces or paramilitary forces. So NDRF is 100% deputationist force. So this is this slide describes the deployment of the various NDRF battalions all over India, and now you can see which are the nodal ministries for various disasters. For flood, tsunami, cyclone, earthquake, we have Ministry of Home Affairs as the nodal. For drought, Ministry of Agriculture. For biological disaster, Ministry of Health and Family Welfare. For chemical disasters, Ministry of Environment and Forest. For nuclear disaster, Ministry of Atomics. For air accident, Ministry of Civil Aviation. And for railway accident, Ministry of Railways, etc. Now, as we all know, that in 2016, November 2016, the 7th Asia Ministerial Conference on Disaster Reduction was organized, and where our Honorable PM has presented the 10 points agenda for disaster reduction, and these 10 points agenda and 17 sustainable development goals after the SEDA framework. And NIDM is organizing each and every training program, webinar, faculty development program, online training programs, keeping in mind on any of the this DNPM's 10-point agenda and the SDG goal simultaneously. So basically, if we say that, we can say it is believed and it is agreed, accepted that disaster management is a collective responsibility of state and central governments, whereas the state is the first responder and the disaster is a state subject. But during major disaster, central government supplements the efforts of the state governments by sending teams of NDRF. We have discussed about policy making institutions, then we have discussed about training imparting institutions, we have discussed about specialist force, and similarly we should also be aware of about the provisions of finance related to disaster management. So this DM Act also provides for creation of National Fund for Disaster Response and Mitigation, and similar funds at national, state and district level. So mitigation funds are utilized for projects exclusively addressing mitigation at national, state and district level. After the recommendation of this 15th Finance Commission in 2019, the earlier NDRF, the National Disaster Response Force, is renamed as NDRMF, that is National Disaster Risk Management Fund, and then SDRF, that is State Disaster Response Fund, is renamed as State Disaster Risk Management Fund. So it in itself very clearly allocates 20% fund for mitigation and 80% funds for response and relief. And this out of this 80% from response and relief, 40% is for response and relief, 30% for capacity, recovery and reconstruction, and 10% for capacity building and preparedness at national level and state level. So NDRMF, that is National Disaster Response Risk and National Disaster Risk Management Fund, has two windows: National Disaster Response Fund and National Disaster Mitigation Fund. Similarly, SDRF also has two windows, that is SDRMF has two windows, SDRF and SDMF. So response and mitigation have two funding windows, and both the windows are not interchangeable. And out of the 80% of the response, it has three funding windows which can have inter windows allocation up to a maximum of 10% of ceiling. And try to, if we say, go to the history of this financing, then prior to 2005, that is enactment of 2000 DM Act, we have Calamity Relief Fund at state level, and we have NCCF, that is National Calamity Contingency Fund at national level. Out of the in CRF, that is calamity fund at state level, 75% was the center share and 25% was the state share. So after the enactment of DM Act 2005, this CRF was renamed as SDRF. That is, Calamity Relief Fund was renamed as State Disaster Response Fund, and NCCF was further renamed as NDRF. But the element of mitigation that categorically and exclusively separately was has now been recommended by 15th Finance Commission, and the guidelines for the operationalization and administration of mitigation and response fund are in the pipeline, and they are about to be in the process of finalization, and once finalized they will be shared with the states and various stakeholders. And other than this, we have National Policy on Disaster Management, which has been formulated and approved in October 2009. And this National Policy on Disaster Management 2009, it lays down the roadmap directions for all government endeavors, and the copy of which is available at www.ndma.gov.in. And I would request each and every participant to kindly go through these guidelines, go through these National Policy on Disaster Management, and go through the websites of NIDM, and go through the guidelines which are issued by NDMA for various disasters, and keep yourself updated with these disaster management activities. If you sincerely wish to take up your career in disaster management. And with this, I have put my words to rest, and I have come to the end of this presentation. If you have any doubt, you all are most welcome, and thank you for the patient hearing and listening. And over to you, Arun. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much for enlightening us on this valuable topic, that is institutional framework of a country. I hope that participants will be benefited, and they have already get a concept related to the institutional framework. Now I would like to invite Shri Shekhar Chaturvedi sir again for his last presentation of the today's session, that is on disaster psychosocial care. I welcome you, sir, and over to you.
Sir, before that, I'm having two questions, sir, to ask to Shri Vikram Gajur, sir.
Okay.
Sir, it was well presentation, sir, very good. And thank you, sir. Thank you for your excellent presentation.
Welcome,
and
sir, please.
Yes, I'm going to ask three questions, sir, regarding that. We have a three-tier system of NDMA, SDMA, and DDMA. National level, we have NDMA, and state level, we have SDMA, and district level, we have a DDMA. Is there any further extension up to taluk level, sir, or up to village level? Because it is grassroots level, it's most important operation. So, is there any policy? Is there any guidelines? Is there any processing procedures are there, sir?
At present, as I've said, that district is the implementing unit. So there is no proposal or anything into pipeline, and that we can percolate down, or we are in the process of creating this disaster management authority below a district level. So at present, we have disaster management authorities at 3 levels only.
Yes, sir. 3 levels only. Okay, sir. And my second question is, we have a NIDM at only national level. We don't have any SIDM, a State Institute of Disaster Management. Is there any other option also, sir? NIDM at a state level?
NIDM is, we don't, NIDM cannot be at a state level because it's a national institute. But it has its own upcoming center at this
Hyderabad.
Not Hyderabad.
Vijayawada.
Vijayawada. Yeah.
Yes, in its expansion process, and if everything goes as per the expectations, and we may also see that various NIDMs or the other various other campuses of NIDM, you never know that they may come up at Guwahati, or some may come up at Himalayan states. So it depends on the government or the ministries and the need of the on-ground need.
Definitely, sir. Yeah,
Definitely.
definitely
So,
there is a need,
and
sir, because we need.
we have SIDMs at state levels, but they are not being governed by NIDM. So they are governed. State institutes of disaster management are governed by the concerned state. We have other ATIs or ATIs also which are governed, which deals in this disaster management field, and NIDM is it imparts training, it imparts capacity, is involved in the process of capacity building of these ATIs as well.
Okay, sir. Okay, sir. Okay, thank you, sir. Thank you. My last question is, because as we are discussed a lot of funds to the district level, to the state level, are NDMA directly providing any fund to the private sector, sir, or any NGO to do
No,
the risk mitigation activities
no,
and all?
no.
So,
We cannot provide a government fund to private organizations, firstly,
hmm,
and
hmm.
fund is being provided by Government of India,
Okay, sir.
and so NDMA has nothing, or SDMA or this, because fund is given by Government of India. Because center share, NDA, if we talk about NDMF, then the center share or the state shares, there is no share of any other share other than center and state.
Okay, sir. Okay, sir. Thank you, sir. Thank you so
Welcome,
much,
sir.
sir.
Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you. Participant, do you have any other question to Mr. Vikram Kajur, sir? Good evening, participant. Is there any other questions from your side? If it is not, we can ask Sri Shekhar Satyarthi, sir. Can go ahead, sir. Mr. Arun, sir, we can ask Sri
Thank
Shekhar,
you,
sir, to.
thank you, thank you, Vasudevanji,
Thank you, sir.
for asking the questions. And let me add on to what Vikramji was telling. That yes, we have the disaster management centers, as he was rightly mentioning, that many of the state disaster management authorities have come up with SIDMs, and also there are disaster management centers in the state ATIs, and they have been functioning for quite long in the field of capacity building of disaster management. But recently it was felt that none of the states are owning the disaster management centers. So that was the major problem at the national level, that unless and until the states own the centers, how long center will continue funding these centers. So that was the problem, and hence the SDMAs were requested to come up with the SIDMs, or get the DMCs which were functioning in the ATIs to be merged with the SDMIs, so that the functioning of disaster management goes on. So this is how things are being taken care of. Now, there is one question from Professor Nagarajan, that why not insist officials to get trained in first aid activities to combat disasters? Sir,
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
what you are telling is very rightly mentioned, and many of the states and the districts, they are taking this up to train their officials in first aid. But the only problem with this idea getting jailed with the state authorities and the district authorities is that majority of the officials, they are not coming forward to get trained. And first aid, unless and until you have the zeal from your inner self, it will be of no use to train the people. So that is why it is not picking up. Although many of the states have come up, they have also come up with the yoga trainings for the disaster responders, etc. So that is all there. But the authorities or the state people, they should also come up, for because we are in dire need of first aid professionals and also the psychosocial counselors. So unless and until people come forward and devote time, because everything is a social service, and if you come up with a mindset of you can say the commercial mindset, then it would be difficult to sustain and continue these activities. So that is there. So now I hope I have answered the question of Professor Nagarajan.
Sir, I can also, if you permit me, I can also add one more thing, sir.
Please.
When these kind of companies are asking to have their disaster management training, first aid and triage training through systematic way of State Disaster Management Authority and DDMA to conduct this kind of program on their corporate social responsibility fund, sir, CSR fund. So there are a lot of institutions like IIDM and other institutions are ready to provide this kind of first aid and triage training to the people with the help of Indian Red Cross Society and Junior Red Cross Society, sir. This is what I'm doing in my area. With the help of IRCS and JRCS, I'm providing this first aid and triage training to all the sectors, sir, in and around Tamil Nadu. For kind information to Nagarajan, sir. Mr. Nagarajan, sir. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. That is very nice that you are doing the activity. Now let me come to another important aspect of disaster management, which is very, very relevant for holistic development, and that is the disaster psychosocial care. So if we talk of disaster psychosocial care, we have 4 words in it. Number 1 is disaster, number 2 is psycho, number 3 is social, and number 4 is care. So when we talk of care, it immediately comes to our mind that it is something related to medical concept and something related to nurturing or say providing social support. So that is what care is all about. Disaster, we all know, we have been talking for the past 2 days in this as disaster. And now what we will be focusing in this session would be psycho and social. So psycho is more related to the mind behavior, and social is more related to your society behavior. So that is what we'll be covering in this session. So this is what we all know when we talk of disaster, the first word, what it does. Destruction, destruction, destruction is what comes to your mind when we talk of disaster. So that is the reason, I think, why people often tend to not talk disaster in their houses. So that is there. But the management part, yes, one must discuss in the house, and one must also sensitize, because charity begins at home. So one must make your family, your house aware of, if something happens of this sort, then what you have to do. So that is where you must have a small discussion or learning by fun. That is how you can manage. That is your outlook. When such disaster happens, what are the expected changes apart from the physical injuries, the deaths, the physical injuries, the loss of property? What other changes you expect? The major changes that you expect are in the behavioral aspect or in the societal aspect, that the societal linkages, they break, the trafficking, it increases, the separation of people are there, and post-disaster activities, what it happens is that the domestic violence increases, the liquor consumption increases. All these things happen, and all these things denote one thing, is that the state of mind of the person who is surviving or being affected by a disaster has changed. And what changes have occurred? They are in terms of increase in alcoholism, decreasing the change in the pattern of sleep, decrease in sleep, effect on the mind, that is trauma, anxiety, fear, worry about your future. As Arun was talking on first day about COVID, during the lockdown period, there was a worry among people that what will happen. There was a issue of migrant laborers. Even though people were everybody. Every government sector, governments, state government, central government, everybody was telling that nothing will happen to you, but still there was a migrant issue. You have seen people migrating from the villages towards the township for want of livelihood. So that livelihood also is impacted. So that impacts your mindset, your thinking. And when we talk of discussion, person, if there's a person affected by the problem of trauma, his behavior pattern changes. From he might become more talkative, he might become hypersensitive, he might become dull, he or she might become introvert. He or she, whenever you want to talk, he or she will always talk of death, injury. He will revisit the entire incident that has happened. So that entire thing is revolves around his mind. It is very difficult for him to come out of that, and to bring him out of that trauma is what psychosocial care means. And once you are in the trauma, what will happen? You have stress, you have PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder, you have depression, and the prolonged depression and PTSD might lead to a tendency of suicide. There's a study, I right now don't remember the person who has done this study, but there is a study which shows that there's a difference between suicidal tendencies also. The tendencies of suicide are more in the feminine gender, but the action of suicide is more in the man. It all depends. It all depends on what? It all depends on your upbringing. We all know that for a girl child, the upbringing of a girl child and a boy child is different. Unknowingly, knowingly, irrespective of that, we all tend to provide the caring equipments to the girl child. That is, you will provide small kitchen set, doll, say small playing, sitting instruments to your girl child. But for boy child, what you will give? You will give bat ball, you will give pistol, you will give gun, you will give car. You knowingly or unknowingly don't have that given to your girl child. This is human tendency. Another thing is that whenever there is some problem, if your boy starts weeping, the one thing that everybody there may be some exceptions, but maximum people, they'll say, don't weep. Please don't weep. But you never say that to your girl child. And when that tendency of not weeping carries with you when you become an adult, and if something of this sort happens, that feeling of not weeping will create a tendency of pressure in your mindset. And once that pressure builds up, unless and until it is released, you will find more suicidal tendencies, more suicides. People, the male childs, they usually are afraid of sharing things. So many a times, what we see often is that when there is an say husband and wife, they are residing with their grown-up children. If husband dies, there is a trauma for the wife, but after a certain span of time, she starts merging with the son and daughter. But if the lady dies, it becomes very difficult for the male child to get attuned. Why? Because he has not been trained, or he has not been grown up. He has not been driven in that direction, that to share everything. So that creates pressure. And once the pressure creates, you get into stress, you get into trauma, and the prolonged trauma gets into PTSD. And when you have PTSD, there are n number of symptoms that you will come across: nightmares, night dreams, flashbacks into that arena, where to that traumatic situation. Instability in mind, your fear of taking any decision. There's a memory loss. There's a sleep loss. There is some sort of detachment from the society, from the family. You try to be alone. So that is where the problem, all the problem arises. And it is not the survivors, it is the caregivers also. For the caregivers, you are entirely into the traumatic situation. Blood all around, injuries all around, destruction all around, but you are working day in and day out. You are away from your family, working for some other's family. At times, even if you are fatigued, you are supposed to work because your reliever or somebody has not come. So you continue to work. So that stress also is there. So the caregiver's stress is also there. So when you design the psychosocial planning, you must also include caregivers also. And when we talk of the problem solution, the tools that have been given by Nimhans, the first and the foremost tool which we all know but we don't follow is to release the pressure, to vent out, to ventilate. See, in the older houses that you were making, you had been living in, you had ventilators. You know that that ventilator is meant for releasing the pressure of the room, but you have never thought of relating that ventilator with the traumatic situation. So, but the first and the foremost thing is to get the person. First and foremost thing is to identify a person. How you can identify? With the help of the neighbors, with the help of the close ones, with the help of the society, you can identify. Or at other times, with your experience also, you can your experience and the time that you devote with the person, you can locate a person who needs psychosocial support. But it is always better to have the help of the loved ones, the closer ones, the society to identify, because that will take a lesser time. So get that person vent out, release the pressure. How you can do that? For that, you have to build that trust with the person. He or she should have trust in you. Then only he or she will try to share. So build that trust. How you can build that trust? It may take time. You have to sit with him or her for long hours, for maybe days together. And once he or she feels that, yes, this person is ready to listen to me, that rapport building is there, that trust building is there, that confidence regained, then and only then that person will vent out and share things with you. So that is where the things start moving. It may take months together, it may take days together, but you have to be patient and relaxed. So once that is there, the process of psychosocial care begins. So once they went out, they'll share. And while they are sharing, please don't interrupt them. Also, don't try to show sympathy to them. Convert that sympathy into empathy. Put your shoes into their boots. Put your foot into their shoes. You will find that why the person is behaving like that. And once you find that why the person is behaving like that, you can design your remedial action with that person. Be positive in your mindset that yes, you can bring that person back to the society. That mindset is needed when you are behaving as a counselor for the psychosocial patient. So you must have that empathy. And once these two things, the release of pressure is there, and you have identified how to tackle, be an active listener. That active listener is also denoted by the position how you are sitting. You have to be squarely placed, that you can have an eye-to-eye contact with the person. You have to be nodding now and then. No, don't speak, but nodding now and then. You have to be relaxed facially, so that person, if he or she sees your face, he or she is confident that yes, this person is listening and can solve my problem. Lean forward, sit in an open position so that you are receiving the ideas. And get the maximum out of that person by active listening. active listening is there. हर बार आपने देखा होगा कि when we go in the groups also, people usually say try to listen. When you try to listen, that gives a strength to you also to design the care activity for that person, to identify that person, that what is the need of that person, so that if I provide that need, then this person can be revived back. So that is there. So these three positions are the positions of wherein we are giving psycho care. That is, we are addressing the mind of that person. And then we come to the social support. Social support, first thing is that you have to also get the side by side, you have also to get the confidence of the society that yes, this person is affected by a problem and is not a mental patient. He is not a psychiatric patient. The abnormal behavior that this person is showing is not because he has gone mad, but because of the problem that he has faced. So that support of the society is needed to get that person back. And once you have that support, you must have the society behave in a way that the survivor, the psychosocial survivor, he or she feels that yes, he or she is still important for the society. He is not outcast. He can still do some activities for this, and he is not thrown away by the society. He can be accepted back by the society. There was a lot of problem initially in the traumatic in this pandemic period. Even the doctors had faced a lot of stress and traumatic situations. But thanks to the ever-changing behavior of the society, that now doctors are being taken in a right way. And once the society, the person has that confidence, that society will take him back, get the interest of the person. What is the right way that person can be diverted to? Because the whole idea is that you have to divert his mind, you have to engage his mind in the activity of the interest, so that he feels good, he or she feels good, and also he or she doesn't go back to the same traumatic situation. So that externalization of interest should be there. And for that, you must need, you will be needing the help of the society. Then design some relaxation activities, yoga, breathing, games, whatever interest you find with that person, get him relaxed by that interest. So you have to make him relax so that his mind comes back to the tune. Entire thing of the psychosocial care is that you have to get him relaxed and out of that situation. Finally, the calm and solace we get in spirituality, you can also try that. This is spirituality doesn't mean that you take you go away from your family to some hill station or something like that. No. You have to be with your family, but you have to devote some time to the spirituality, so that calmness in the mind comes in. So these are the 7 tools which are often used by the counselors to get the person back into the society and address the psychosocial issues of the person. These are all given by NIMHANS. So I can say that they have been using these situations. And the last idea is that prepare yourself and don't panic, because once you panic, your mind goes out of your hands. And once the mind goes out of hands, it is very difficult to get him back. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Shekhar sir. Thank you so much. Now the floor is open for the question session. If the participant have any query, they can raise their hand or they can write in the chat box so that they can take the question.
Participant, உங்களுக்கு ஏதாவது question இருக்கா, doubts இருந்தா you can raise your hand. Mr. Arun will open your link so that you can talk to us. நீங்க எங்கள்கிட்ட பேசலாம். உங்களுக்கு ஏதாவது query இருந்தா you can raise your query. Hello, my dear participants, is there any questions from your side?
There is a question from Samir's side that, sir, is there any institute to train water reserve in flooding emergencies?
Sir, that is comes under PWD, sir. PW water service. Wherever there is inundation, wherever there is flooding water, with help of rural development department, they have to, with a heavy duty machine, they will suck all the waters and do it in other way, or they will make the drainage on the breaking wall and breaking other places and drain out the water in a particular inundation place or flooding place.
Okay.
Samirji, the question that you have asked regarding the rescue training in flooding, we have a institute sea water in Calcutta. We have a marine training institute in Chennai, and also one institute in UP also. They all train you for how to get rescue for the rescue training in flooding, how to do that. NDRF is also equipped, SDRFs are also equipped to give the training for the flood rescue.
Fire and rescue department also doing, sir.
Yeah.
Participant. I think from tomorrow, I think last day, we supposed to ask the question to the participants, sir. Instead of waiting for participants. They are attending last 3 days. What they have understood from what they lesson learned from our webinar. We have to ask the question to particular participants, sir. No other way. If you are asking, people are keeping mum and they are not asking, raising anything. Sir allowed, we can raise the question tomorrow, sir.
Okay, then if there is no question, then we can wind up today.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. I just to put a small advice to all the participants, sir, for tomorrow program. Dear participants, good evening. And our last day program tomorrow will start at 2:30 p.m. Please all join in time. Most of them was telling that they are not received the link, and most I come to know that most of them not having the WebEx app in your smartphone. For that, you are not access our program. So I sent a message to last night itself. Please download Cisco WebEx app in your smartphone or laptop, so that you can easily access all our program in the future. Not only now, you can access all our program in the future. So please keep in touch. If you have any question, you can also raise in the chat box. And as our Shekhar Sadhuti sir said, you can enroll it also for your certification. Please do the enroll with the characteristics what the password they are asking on it in it. So please be with us tomorrow. So we will have another wonderful session tomorrow. And from my side, I thank to all the participants, those who are participated today. Thank you, sir, and thanks to Mr. Arun sir and Shekhar Sadhuti sir. Thank you, sir. Thank you so much.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you, Vikram sir.
Thank you, and thank you, Vikram sir too. And
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much. Now, I request all the participants that tomorrow we will meet at the same time with the same link. So there is no change in the link. So you can join us. Thank you all the
thank you, sir.
participants.
Have a nice evening to everyone.